Short answer to the title's question, technically yes. In truth, it's complicated. As the new ruling praetor of New Phyrexia, Elesh Norn, inches closer to her plan to bless the many planes in the multiverse with the glory of completion, a coalition of allies steps up to defend the world from this calamity. In Phyrexia, all will be one will be taken back to the twisted world of New Phyrexia and enter the grand scheme of the Mother of the Machines. Hello guys, I'm your host Octopus here, and welcome to a new, kind of speculative video covering some of the new information that Wizards has released earlier this week and regarding the upcoming set Phyrexia All Will Be One, scheduled to be released on February 10th. As we sadly learned from the recent events in the story of Ajani Goldmane, the extent of the new Phyrexian threat is much more severe than we could have ever imagined. From what has been leaked, there will be an insane amount of planeswalkers appearing in the next set, but Wizards has also disclosed that, of the 10 heroes that will be printed in All Will Be One, as many as half of them will succumb to Phyrexia. This means that a grand total of 5 out of the 10 planeswalkers that you can see right now have either already been Phyrexianized and are waiting for the right moment as dormant sleeper agents, or will undergo completion sometime during the next story arc. And in this video I will pick my chosen 5 and explain why, in my opinion, they will perish in the face of Phyrexian corruption. As you can see, there's no new entry, and the stories of each of these walkers go back to previous expansions. From Kaldheim, where the story arc of New Phyrexia truly began to take shape, and all the way to Dominaria United and the Brothers' War, in which the story events prompt the allies to take up arms and fight firsthand to repel yet another Phyrexian invasion of the plane. And this is the unfortunate group of heroes who will face Phyrexia in the new set. And it consists of the Mentalist Jace, the Ninja Kaito, the Assassin Kaya, the Geomancer Koth, the Commander Luka, the Lithomancer Nahiri, the Elven Elementalist Nissa, the Woods Health Tyrakel, the Gorgon Queen Rashka, and the Emperor of Kamigawa, also known as the Wandering Emperor or simply the Wanderer. The only question that is left unanswered now is, who among these 10 heroes will fall? Okay, let's rip the band-aid off right away. My first planeswalker pick to undergo completion and become one of Elesh Norn's minions is going to be Jace Beleren. And I know what you might be thinking, but just hear me out on this one. Jace's story has had its glorious moments in the set that saw him co-founder of the Gatewatch, also known as the, MTG Justice League, together with Gideon Jura, Nissa Ravane, and Chandra Nollar, and which reached its peak in the War of the Spark narrative arc. Since then, however, if we ignore Zendikar Rising for a second, the Blue Mage from Rin has been very far from being in the spotlight. His time in the story seems to have almost run out, and although he remains an iconic character in Magic the Gathering's lore, the narrative space that Wizards has granted him lately has been almost non-existent, or at any rate a very low impact one. And this is exactly where the glorious past of this character can play an important role in contributing to an organic development of the current plot. Jace may indeed have been on a descending course, but in the hearts of those who have followed his rise to a positive hero, that image is actually unlikely to be compromised. And that's exactly the point. There is no drama anywhere in the world without proper sacrifice. Gideon's death in the final stages of the War of the Spark is a prime example of this. This is Phyrexia's long-awaited revenge after thousands of years that we're talking about. And the lore around Phyrexia is one of the earliest and most structured ones together with that of Bolas. They just deserve this moment to be as grandiose as it can be. And someone, my friends, will have to pay the drama price for this mechanical payback. And for narratological reasons, as well as to give new importance to the character himself, I believe that this someone will be none other than Jace Beleren, the Mind Sculptor. It just makes the most sense out of the 10 possible choices. Okay, now I know that choosing Jace as my first pick most likely put me in a bad spot with lots of you guys, but my second pick is directly tied to the first. Rashka has disappeared from Wiz's radar for quite a while now, just after the conclusion of the War of the Spark. Yet, we know that somehow, for some reason, she will join Jace, the Gatewatch, and the Coalition forces to support the Mirror Resistance efforts against Elesh Norn on New Phyrexia. Now, my question is, why? Despite Jace and Rashka having been romantically involved in the past, the two had drifted apart in the aftermath of the War of Spark, and furthermore, in entering cahoots with Bun to overturn Izoni and regain control of the Golgari Swarm, Rashka had exposed herself to the blackmail of the Dimir Guildmaster Lazav. Why do we now see her fighting a new Phyrexia alongside Jace then? When did they get back together? What happened to the Gorgon Queen's ambition to rule and preserve her own guild, which until now had driven basically her every action? My guess is that once completed, a now sleeper agent Jace approached Rashka and convinced her to follow him to New Phyrexia, leveraging on the feelings that the Gorgon still had for him. Once drawn to New Phyrexia then, Rashka would have either willingly, at Jace's persuasion I guess, or unwillingly be turned into a Phyrexian herself. And speaking of characters who have long since exhausted their degree of impact on the lore, I believe that another Gatewatch co-founder will meet her hand in All Will Be One. I am talking about Nissa Ravane, the Elfin World Soul speaker planeswalker from Zendikar. Now, there are at least two reasons for this. First, just like Jace and Rashka, Nissa's story arc, which began with her on-plane being ravaged by the Eldrazi Titans, which she herself had freed actually, has come to an end. Two out of three Titans were successfully neutralized, and the third was imprisoned on Innistrاد's moon by Nissa herself, aided by a back then still uncompleted Tamiyo. Furthermore, the subsequent break with the Gatewatch allowed this character to definitely complete his function by helping her on-plane to heal from the scars left in the Titan's wake. The second reason is very similar to what we saw earlier with Jace, and that is the dramatic effect. In fact, the love that slowly developed between Nissa and the pyromancer Chandra Nollar and that finally blossomed in the aftermath of the War of the Spark might just be the perfect weapon that I believe will be used by Wizards to give a decidedly tragic touch to All Will Be One. We know that after breaking up with the Gatewatch, Nissa retreated to Zendikar to help her people, and it is precisely on Zendikar that she will be joined by Chandra Nollar, who will inform her of the Gatewatch defense's plans against the growing threat of Elesh Norn and New Phyrexia. Only then, probably just moved by the love that she feels for Chandra, will Nissa agree to once again take sides with the Gatewatch and the rest of the coalition and will travel together with Chandra back to Dominaria. Now, I personally believe that Nissa is not currently a New Phyrexian sleeper agent, but that she will definitely perish in the fight to come and will undergo completion as a result of that. Also, Chandra's presence creates just the perfect setup for the classic lovers drama where one of the two is forced tragically to kill the other. I have a strong feeling that it will be Chandra herself who will have to kill her beloved Nissa during the events of All Will Be One to sort of free her from the completion state she ended up in, and honestly, if Wizards decide to do this, it could very well be the highest dramatic peak of this story. Or at least that's how I would do it, but honestly, I don't know if Wizards would ever commit to something this dramatic and tragic. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, so my fourth pick is going to be the Wanderer. And if this ends up being what will actually happen to her, I feel like it would be both logical and unfortunate. I mean, the Wandering Emperor is such a mysterious and intriguing character really. Much of her lore remains unknown to this day. What we do know is that she and Kaito grew up together on the plane of Kamigawa, and their story began when the Emperor's spark was accidentally ignited by Tezzeret in an attempt to control the Kami Kyodai through a prototype reality chip. The interaction with the prototype caused the Emperor's spark to ignite, but it also made it unstable, causing irregularities in her planeswalking abilities that still persist to this day and that fundamentally make it impossible for her to fully control her walkings. Though in Neon Dynasty the Wanderer could temporarily enjoy the stability offered by the reality chip, thus briefly reuniting with Kaito and Kyodai, that is now no longer the case as her spark became unstable again. And while her being unable to actually control her walkings could be seen as a sort of point against considering the Emperor as a possible candidate to be Phyrexianized, and that is because of course she would fundamentally constitute an unpredictable asset for New Phyrexia, remember that we really don't know the true and deep nature of this instability, and it may very well be that the process of completion, by completely changing its nature, may in fact stabilize her Planeswalker's spark. If, on the contrary, this should not be the case, completing the Emperor could still be a sort of safeguard measure for New Phyrexia to preserve its lineage should the battle against Dominaria fail. I mean, think about it, the Emperor would remain the only Phyrexian survivor lost in the multiverse somewhere, and in this way, the mechanical race would still be able to thrive and possibly rebuild. And in addition to that, condemning the Emperor to become a Phyrexian would be an excellent way for Wizard to advance both her story, but also that of Kaito, who would inevitably get a more central role as he would become personally involved in the main story events. Now, why did I say then it would be both logical and unfortunate if this were to happen? Well, that is because I think that it makes fundamental sense from a narrative perspective to do this. I mean, I can see the sense in condemning the Emperor to this fate, but at the same time, seeing her fall in front of New Phyrexia could mean that we will never, or at least not in the short term, find out a lot more about her past than what we actually already know, which is not a lot, because her story would become immediately and completely projected towards the future rather than the past. And ultimately, it would also be a bit of a cheap way of sacrificing one of the good guys that, in fact, has never had too much narrative depth and who therefore finds herself to be a generally interesting and well-regarded character, but also really expendable. Okay, so my fifth and final pick is going to be Luca. And the reason, bare and simple, is why not? I'm actually sorry I don't have much to say about him, but this character has just one of the worst and most negligible stories I've ever seen. Ever since it was introduced to Ikoria, it seems like Wizard still hasn't made up his mind about who they want this character to be or what his motivations are. At times, he seems to recall a worse version of a pre-completion Ajani who takes the side of the weak and the oppressed, in this case of wild animals, while at other times we see him engaged in completely insane activities such as storming the Academy of Strixhaven on Arcavius together with Extus Nar and his minions. Particularly, during the events of Strixhaven, Luca agrees to collaborate with Nar solely on the basis of his personal distrust of the Academy and the elitist and persecutory character that Luca sees in them. Now, why does he see Strixhaven as persecutory, you might ask? Well, apparently Luca doesn't approve of the attitude that the Academy has towards the poor dark wizards known as Auric, who also happen to be ruthless assassins and minions of Nar himself. I mean, come on, what is wrong with you? Anyway, the Battle of Strixhaven eventually ended with the intervention of the Founding Dragons, the death of Nar, and the consequent retreat of the Auric. However, during the story, we're told that Luca agrees to aid Nar in exchange for something, although to this day, we still don't know what that something actually is. Later, as if nothing has happened, Luca will join the Gatewatch and the Coalition to fight against the new Phyrexian threat, and all will be one. Okay, I don't know you guys, but isn't that at least a tiny bit sus? I mean, why would he ever do that? What is this mysterious something that Luca received from Nar? Could he have already been turned into a Phyrexian sleeper agent? I personally think that this is a bit of a reach, because it would mean that Extus Nar would have had to have some sort of connection with Phyrexia, or be a Phyrexian agent himself, and as far as I recall, there's nothing in Strixhaven's story to actually imply that. I guess we'll just have to wait and see if Luca is indeed our lucky number 5, but I do believe that, all things considered, he is the most likely to be. Okay, there you have it guys, these were my 5 picks for the soon-to-be completed walkers featured in All Will Be 1. Now, what about you? Let me know in the comments who do you think will fall before the power of New Phyrexia and join Elish Norn in bringing the glorious Phyrexian perfection across the multiverse. Is there any planeswalker that you believe will die without necessarily undergo completion? Let me know in the comments section down below. As always, I want to thank you all so much for watching and having the patience to stick around until the very end of my rants. If you like our videos and what we do here on this channel, make sure to show us some love by liking this video, sharing with your friends, and hitting that subscribe button. It really makes a huge difference. Okay, so this is all I had for you today, my friends. My name is Octopus, and I will see you in the next one.